The courtroom doors slammed shut behind the social worker, and Carter felt his baby brother go limp in his arms. "I'm sorry," Maya whispered, her voice cracking. 23 families have said no. The state wants to separate you." 10-year-old Carter looked at his silent 6-year-old sister, then at the 8-month-old baby who'd stopped breathing twice this month, and said the words that would break every adult in that hallway. "Then we'll just die together." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed, because everyone knew he meant it. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens to these children. Comment below with your city, so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's go back to where it all began. 3 months earlier, Carter had been a different child. Not innocent, he'd lost that at 7 when the police broke down their apartment door, but he'd still believed adults could fix things. He'd believed the system existed to protect children like him and Sophie and baby Ethan. He'd believed that somewhere someone would want them. That belief died slowly, rejection by rejection, until nothing remained except the cold mathematical certainty that they were running out of time. "This one sounds promising," Maya had said that first week, her optimism still intact. She'd been assigned their case the day after Carter's mother and father were sentenced to 15 years for drug trafficking. Maya was 28, had been a social worker for 8 years, and had seen enough to know better than hope. But something about Carter's fierce protectiveness toward his siblings made her want to try harder than she'd ever tried before. The first family, the Hendersons, had a 5-bedroom house in the suburbs and a golden retriever. They'd attended the meeting with genuine smiles, asked thoughtful questions, seemed genuinely interested, right up until Maya mentioned baby Ethan's feeding tube. "A feeding tube," Mrs. Henderson had repeated, her smile freezing in place. "Is that permanent?" "The doctors aren't sure yet," Maya had explained. "He was born premature, had complications, but he's gaining weight, meeting most developmental milestones." "Most," Mr. Henderson interrupted. Carter had watched their faces change. He'd learned to recognize that look, interest dissolving into calculation, compassion transforming into concern about inconvenience. He'd squeezed Sophie's hand under the table and said nothing. Sophie never said anything anymore. She hadn't spoken since the night their parents were arrested. "And the girl," Mrs. Henderson continued, "Sophie, it says here she's selectively mute." "Trauma response," Maya said carefully. "With therapy and stability, there's every reason to believe—" "We'll need to think about it," Mr. Henderson said, standing up. Everyone in that room knew what think about it meant. The Hendersons never called back. The second family, Carter couldn't even remember their names, lasted through exactly 1 home visit before deciding that 3 children was more than we're prepared for. The third family wanted only Sophie, thought she was manageable. Carter had stood up in that meeting, all 4 feet of righteous fury, and said, "We're a package deal." Maya hadn't corrected him. By the 10th rejection, Carter stopped hoping. By the 15th, he stopped caring about the reasons. Medical needs, behavioral concerns, age range too broad, not enough bedrooms, not the right fit. The excuses blended together into one consistent message: "You're too much trouble." "They don't want broken kids," Carter said to Maya one afternoon, sitting in her office while Sophie colored and baby Ethan slept in the carrier beside them. "That's what we are, right? Broken." Maya's eyes had filled with tears. "Carter, sweetheart, you're not—" "Don't lie to me," he said quietly. "I'm 10, I'm not stupid, Ethan's sick, Sophie won't talk, and I'm the kid who has to take care of them because nobody else will. That's not what normal families want." "You shouldn't have to take care of them," Maya said. "You should be allowed to be a child." Carter looked at her with eyes that had aged beyond his years. "I stopped being a child the night my mom chose drugs over us. I'm just waiting for you to figure out what I already know." "What's that? That we're never getting adopted together? That eventually you'll run out of options and split us up? That's what happens to kids like us." Maya had gone home that night and cried for 2 hours. Because she knew Carter was probably right. The breakthrough, if you could call it that, came during rejection number 19. The family had seemed perfect, experienced foster parents, medical background, large home in a good school district. They'd met the children 3 times. Sophie had even smiled once. Carter had allowed himself the dangerous luxury of imagining a future. Then came the phone call. "We've decided to pursue a different placement," the woman said, her voice professionally apologetic. "The children are lovely truly, but we've been offered an infant. A healthy infant. I'm sure you understand it's easier to bond when they're young and don't come with so much history." Maya had hung up and immediately called her supervisor. "I need options, real options. These children are running out of time." "There aren't any options," her supervisor said tiredly. "You know how the system works. 3 siblings with special needs. In this market, you'd need a miracle." "Then find me a miracle," Maya snapped. "Because if we separate these kids, we'll destroy them. You've read Carter's psychological evaluation. He stated explicitly that he'd rather die than be separated from his siblings. That's not hyperbole. That's a suicide risk assessment waiting to happen." Her supervisor sighed. "I'll see what I can do." What she did was lower the standards. Any family willing to take all 3 children would be considered regardless of how unconventional. Any family with a clean background check and adequate space would get a meeting. The criteria shifted from ideal to willing. That's when the Mercer's application landed on Maya's desk. She'd read it 3 times, certain she was missing something. Jackson and Elena Mercer, ages 38 and 36, married 12 years. Jackson employment listed as motorcycle club vice president. Elena registered nurse ER specialty. Previous adoption attempts, 2, both denied. Maya had immediately pulled their file. The denial reasons were stark: lifestyle concerns regarding motorcycle club affiliation, questions about stability of employment, environment potentially unsuitable for children. In other words, bikers. Maya's first instinct was to reject the application outright. Hell's Angels. Seriously. She'd seen the news reports, knew the stereotypes. Drugs, violence, criminal activity. These were not the kind of people who should be around vulnerable children. But then she read Elena's credentials. 15 years in emergency medicine, specialized in pediatric trauma, volunteer coordinator for children's hospital charity events, references from hospital administration calling her exceptionally compassionate and professionally exemplary. And Jackson's file, once she dug deeper, wasn't what she expected either. Combat veteran, 2 tours in Afghanistan, honorable discharge, no criminal record, not even traffic violations. The motorcycle club he belonged to, the Iron Brotherhood, had an entire section in their file dedicated to community service, toy drives, charity rides for children's hospitals, fundraising for families with medical expenses. Still, bikers. Maya scheduled the meeting anyway. She was that desperate. Jackson and Elena Mercer arrived exactly on time, which already set them apart from half the families Maya worked with. They weren't wearing leather. Jackson in clean jeans and a button-down shirt, Elena in professional slacks and a sweater. They looked normal, disappointingly normal. "Thank you for meeting with us," Elena said, shaking Maya's hand with a firm grip. "We know our application probably raised some red flags." "Several," Maya admitted. "Let's start with the obvious question. Why were you denied adoption twice before?" Jackson didn't flinch. "Because people see the motorcycle club and assume we're criminals. Because the word Hell's Angels scares people who've never met us. Because the system has a very narrow definition of what a family should look like, and we don't fit it." "Are you criminals?" Maya asked bluntly. "No, ma'am. I've got a spotless record. So does my wife. So do the majority of our club members. We're motorcycle enthusiasts who happen to organize together. We ride, we raise money for good causes, we look out for each other. That's it." "The club has been investigated and cleared," Elena interrupted gently. "Every time. Because we're not a criminal organization. We're a community. But I understand your concern. If I saw Hell's Angels on a form without context, I'd be concerned too." Maya studied them. Elena's eyes were direct, intelligent, genuinely kind. Jackson had the controlled demeanor of someone used to being judged and determined to prove people wrong. They didn't look like criminals. They looked like people who'd been rejected by a prejudiced system and refused to give up. Still. "Why adoption?" Maya asked. "Why not biological children?" Elena's expression shifted, grief flickering across her face before she controlled it. "We had a son. Liam. He died 5 years ago. Car accident. He was 3. The room went silent. After we lost him, Elena continued, her voice steady, despite obvious pain. We tried for more children. Couldn't conceive. Fertility treatments failed. We considered surrogacy, but she looked at Jackson, who took her hand. But eventually we realized we were trying to replace Liam instead of honoring his memory by helping other children who needed parents. We applied for adoption 4 years ago, Jackson added. Foster to adopt program. Got denied because of the club. Applied again 2 years later with a different agency. Same result. We were about to give up when we saw a news story about the number of kids aging out of the system. Kids nobody wants. And we thought, maybe we're exactly the kind of parents those kids need. People who don't give up. Maya felt something shift in her chest. The children in question are 3 siblings. 10-year-old boy, 6-year-old girl, 8-month-old baby boy. The baby has medical needs. Feeding tube developmental delays, requires frequent doctor visits. The girl is selectively mute due to trauma. The oldest boy is complicated. Highly intelligent, fiercely protective, and carrying responsibility no child should have. They've been rejected 22 times. As a set, they're considered virtually unadoptable. We want to meet them, Elena said immediately. You don't understand. We understand perfectly, Jackson interrupted. You've got 3 kids everyone's given up on. Kids who need parents who won't quit when things get hard. Ma'am, I spent 12 months in Afghanistan keeping my unit alive through combat situations that should have killed us all. My wife spends her days saving people everyone else has given up for dead. We don't scare easy and we don't quit, ever. Maya wanted to say no. Every professional instinct screamed that this was wrong, that bikers couldn't possibly provide the stable environment these children needed. But she looked at Elena's earnest face, at Jackson's determined expression, and heard herself say, the children are currently in a temporary group home. I can arrange a meeting, but understand this is just a meeting. No promises, no commitments, just a conversation. That's all we're asking for, Elena said. A chance. The meeting was scheduled for Saturday at Laurelhurst Park neutral territory, where the children could feel safe. Maya arrived early with Carter, Sophie, and baby Ethan. Carter had been silent the entire drive, which worried her more than if he'd been arguing. These people might be different, Maya tried. They're not, Carter said flatly. You don't know that. Yes, I do. They'll meet us, they'll see Ethan's feeding tube, they'll watch Sophie not talk, and they'll realize we're too much work. Then they'll make excuses and leave. That's what always happens. Sophie squeezed his hand. She was holding Mr. Hopsworth, the threadbare stuffed rabbit that went everywhere with her. Baby Ethan gurgled in the carrier, blissfully unaware that his entire future hung in the balance of this meeting. When the Mercers arrived, Carter's first thought was, they look normal. His second thought was, that's somehow worse, because normal people had rejected them 22 times. At least if these people looked different, their rejection might hurt less. Jackson approached slowly, hands visible, making himself smaller tactics. Carter recognized from dealing with scared animals. Elena hung back, letting Jackson take the lead. Hey, Jackson said quietly, crouching to Carter's eye level. I'm Jax. This is my wife, Elena. You must be Carter. Carter said nothing. Strong, silent type. I respect that. Jax looked at Sophie. And you're Sophie. I heard you like to draw. Sophie clutched Mr. Hopsworth tighter. That's Mr. Hopsworth, Carter said defensively. He's important. I can see that, Jax said seriously. Important things should be protected. You're doing a good job. Carter blinked. Nobody had ever said that before. Elena moved closer, her attention on baby Ethan. And this must be Ethan, hi sweet boy. She had that specific gentle tone medical professionals use with infants, simultaneously warm and clinically observant. Carter watched her note the feeding tube, the medical alert bracelet, the slight asymmetry in Ethan's face that indicated his prematurity. Watched her expression not change at all. He needs to eat every 3 hours, Carter said. And his medicine is at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. He can't miss it. Thank you for telling me, Elena said. That's really helpful information. You take good care of him. I'm his brother. That's my job. That's a big job for someone your age, Elena said gently. Someone has to do it. The statement hung in the air, heavy with everything Carter wasn't saying, because my parents didn't. Because nobody else will. Because if I don't, he'll die. Maya suggested they walk, and Carter found himself moving through the park with these strange adults who somehow hadn't run away yet. Sophie held his hand on one side. On the other, Jax walked with the careful distance of someone used to being perceived as threatening. Maya said you've had a rough time, Jax said after a while. Carter laughed bitterly. That's one way to put it. What would you call it? A disaster, a nightmare, take your pick. Fair enough. Jax was quiet for a moment. I was adopted when I was 12. Carter's head snapped up. You were... Yep. Foster care from age 8 to 12. Group homes, temporary placements, the whole mess. Got adopted by a couple everyone said were wrong for me. Guy was a truck driver, barely made minimum wage. Woman had MS, used a wheelchair sometimes. Everyone told them they couldn't handle a troubled preteen boy. What happened? They loved me anyway. Gave me a home, taught me that family doesn't have to look like what everyone expects. Saved my life, honestly. Jax looked at Carter. So when people tell me I'm not the right kind of person to be a parent, I know they're wrong. Because I wouldn't be here if someone hadn't looked past all the reasons to say no and focused on the one reason to say yes. What reason? That I needed them, and they had love to give. Carter wanted to believe him. Wanted it so badly his chest ached with the wanting. But 22 rejections had taught him that hope was dangerous. We've been rejected 22 times, he said. 22 families who said they wanted kids like us right up until they met us. You'll be number 23. What if we're not? Elena asked. She'd caught up to them carrying Ethan with the competence of someone who'd held many babies. What if we're the ones who say yes, you won't? Why are you so sure? Because Ethan's sick. Because Sophie won't talk. Because I'm angry and mean and I don't trust anybody. Because we're too much trouble. Carter, Elena said gently. I'm an ER nurse. I've handled a lot worse than a feeding tube. Jax grew up in the system. He understands trauma better than most therapists. And you're not mean. You're scared. There's a difference. I'm not scared, Carter said automatically. Yes, you are. You're terrified. You're 10 years old, trying to hold your family together while everyone around you falls apart. That's not mean. That's survival. Something in Carter's chest cracked. Sophie doesn't talk, he said, his voice breaking. She hasn't said a word in 3 months. The doctors don't know if she'll ever talk again. That's okay, Jax said. Not everyone needs words to communicate. Sophie tells us plenty without talking right. As if summoned. Sophie tugged on Elena's sleeve and held up a drawing she'd been working on. It showed 3 stick figures, 2 small, 1 tiny, standing alone under a dark scribbled sky. Separate from them, 2 larger figures stood in sunshine. Elena studied it seriously. Is this you and your brothers? Sophie nodded. And these 2 people over here, is that where you want to be? Another nod, more hesitant. In the sunshine with a family. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. She nodded once more, then buried her face against Carter's side. Elena crouched down, careful not to crowd them. Sophie, I can't promise everything will be perfect, but I can promise that if you come live with us, you'll be in the sunshine. All 3 of you. We won't separate you. Ever. Everyone says that, Carter said bitterly. Then they change their minds. Then watch us prove we're different, Jax said simply. The meeting ended with Maya scheduling a home visit, and Carter tried not to let himself hope. But that night, lying in his bunk at the group home while Sophie slept above him and Ethan's medical monitor beeped softly nearby, he let himself imagine it. A house with sunshine. Parents who didn't leave. A family that wanted them. He fell asleep with that dream, and for the first time in months, didn't have nightmares. The home visit was scheduled for the following Wednesday. Maya picked them up early, and Carter spent the entire drive memorizing the route just in case. Just in case they needed to run. just in case this was another trap, another disappointment, another adult lie. The Mercers lived in a modest house in a working-class neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but clean and well-maintained. The yard had toys scattered across it, donations for an upcoming charity drive, Jax explained, and a wheelchair ramp leading to the front door. "Why do you have a ramp?" Carter asked. "Elena's mom has mobility issues," Jax said. "She visits sometimes. We wanted her to feel welcome." Inside the house was normal. Comfortable furniture, family photos on the walls, the smell of something baking. Elena appeared from the kitchen, wearing an apron flower on her cheek. "I made cookies," she announced. "Fair warning, I'm a better nurse than baker, so they might be questionable." Sophie's eyes went wide. She tugged Carter's hand and pointed at the kitchen. "You want to help?" Elena asked. "Come on, let's see if we can salvage this batch." Sophie actually let go of Carter's hand and followed Elena into the kitchen. Carter watched them go, his heart hammering. Sophie never left his side. Never. "She's safe," Jack said quietly. "I promise." "How can you promise that you don't even know us?" "I know enough. I know you're brave enough to protect your siblings against the whole world. I know Sophie trusts her brother's judgment, and I know Ethan needs someone who won't give up when things get complicated." Jack sat down, making himself less imposing. "Here's what I figure: you've been lied to enough. So I'm going to be straight with you. Yes, we're bikers. Yes, we have motorcycles and leather jackets and a clubhouse. Yes, that scares some people. But we're also people who show up, who keep promises, who fight for the people we love. Your social worker is probably terrified right now that we're going to corrupt you or something. But what we're actually going to do, if you'll let us, is give you the most boring, stable, normal childhood we can possibly manage." "Normal?" Carter laughed. "Nothing about us is normal." "Good. Normal's overrated anyway." From the kitchen came the sound of laughter, Elena's warm chuckle, and something that made Carter's heart stop: Sophie's giggle. Sophie, who hadn't made a sound in 3 months, was laughing. Carter stood up so fast he knocked his chair over. He ran to the kitchen doorway and stopped dead. Sophie stood at the counter, covered in flour, mixing cookie dough with fierce concentration. Elena was laughing, flour in her hair, demonstrating how to fold in chocolate chips. And Sophie was smiling, actually smiling. "Look," Elena said, noticing Carter. "Sophie's a natural baker, much better than me." Sophie turned and her smile got bigger. She pointed at the dough, then at Carter, inviting him to join. "I think that means you're needed in here," Elena said warmly. "Come on, there's enough cookie dough to go around." Carter found himself standing at the counter making cookies with his sister and this woman who might become their mother. Jax brought Ethan in, settling into a rocking chair in the corner to give the baby his feeding with practiced competence that surprised Carter. Maya stood in the doorway, watching, tears streaming down her face. Later, after the cookies were baked and eaten, they were actually pretty good after Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch with Mr. Hopsworth and Ethan was napping in a borrowed crib. Jax and Elena sat down with Carter. "We want you to understand something," Elena said. "We've been through the system trying to adopt. We've been rejected because people think we're not good enough. We know what that feels like to be judged and found wanting. We're not going to do that to you. We want to apply to foster you," Jax added. "All 3 of you. It'll take time, background checks, home studies, all the bureaucracy. But we're not going anywhere. Whether it takes 6 months or 6 years, we're staying." Carter wanted to believe them. But 22 rejections had carved out something essential inside him, left him hollow in places that should have been full of trust. "Why?" he asked. "Why us? You could apply for an easy kid, a baby without medical problems, a kid who talks. Why would you choose us?" Elena reached across the table and took his hand. "Because you need us. Because Sophie deserves parents who'll wait however long it takes for her to feel safe enough to speak. Because Ethan needs someone who sees past the feeding tube to the beautiful baby he is. And because you, Carter, deserve to be a child instead of carrying the weight of the world." "I can't stop protecting them," Carter said fiercely. "Even if you adopt us, I can't just stop." "We're not asking you to," Jack said. "We're asking to help you. You shouldn't have to do it alone." Something broke open in Carter's chest. "Everyone leaves," he whispered. Everyone always leaves. Then watch us stay, Elena said simply. The application process began the next day. Maya submitted the Mercers' paperwork with a detailed memo explaining why they should be considered despite previous denials. Her supervisor was skeptical, but agreed to move forward with the home study. The home study evaluator was less accommodating. Her name was Patricia Vance, and she arrived at the Mercer home with obvious prejudice already formed. Carter, Sophie, and Ethan were there for the evaluation. Maya thought it important that Patricia see them interacting as a family. Patricia walked through the house with a clipboard making notes with sharp, disapproving sounds. The bedrooms were adequate. The kitchen was functional. The neighborhood was acceptable barely. Then she spotted the photographs on the wall. Jax in his leather vest with club patches. Elena standing with a group of bikers at a charity event. "These are your associates?" Patricia asked, her tone making the word sound like an accusation. "Our friends," Elena corrected. "Our community. The Iron Brotherhood Hell's Angels," Patricia read from her notes. "Affiliated with criminal activity, multiple investigations, none of which resulted in charges," Jax interrupted. "We're a legitimate motorcycle club. We raise money for children's hospitals, organize toy drives, support families with medical expenses. We're not criminals." The perception is wrong, Elena said firmly. And frankly, Ms. Vance judging people based on perception rather than facts is exactly the kind of prejudice that's failed these children 22 times already. Patricia's expression hardened. "I'm here to evaluate whether this home is appropriate for vulnerable children. Your lifestyle choices." "Our lifestyle choices include stable employment, a clean home community involvement, and the demonstrated ability to care for children with complex needs," Elena interrupted. "What exactly is inappropriate about that?" Carter watched the exchange with growing dread. He'd seen this before, adults deciding they weren't good enough, making excuses wrapped in concern. He squeezed Sophie's hand. "I'm concerned about the environment," Patricia said. "Children exposed to motorcycle club culture." "Children exposed to what?" Jax demanded, his voice rising. "To people showing up for each other, to community service, to adults who model loyalty and integrity. Please explain what's harmful about that." "The image." "Screw the image," Carter said loudly. Everyone turned to stare. Carter stood up, shaking with fury. 22 families looked at us and decided we weren't worth the trouble, he said, his voice cracking. 22 times we got told we were too broken, too difficult, too much. And these people you think are so bad, they're the first ones who ever said we were worth fighting for. So I don't care what they wear or what they ride or what you think about them. They show up. They keep promises. They make Sophie laugh. That's more than anyone else has ever done. Patricia opened her mouth, but Carter wasn't finished. You want to know what's harmful? Harmful is being rejected over and over because nobody wants kids who aren't perfect. Harmful is my baby brother almost dying because we couldn't get stable placement fast enough. Harmful is my sister forgetting how to speak because she's been disappointed so many times. That's harmful. These people, they're the first hope we've had in months. Silence fell across the room. Sophie was crying silently, clutching Mr. Hopsworth. Baby Ethan started fussing, and Elena automatically moved to comfort him, checking his feeding tube with practiced efficiency. Patricia watched Elena soothe the baby, watched Jax crouch beside Carter and murmur something quiet and reassuring, watched Sophie lean against Elena's side as if she belonged there. I'll submit my report to the board, Patricia said stiffly, but I have serious reservations about this placement. After she left, Carter finally let himself cry. Not the angry tears he'd expected, but exhausted, frightened sobs that he'd been holding back for months. Jax held him while he fell apart, and Elena gathered Sophie close, and baby Ethan slept peacefully through the crisis, trusting that these adults would handle whatever came. She's going to deny you, Carter said when he could speak again, just like all the others, because of the motorcycles. Maybe, Jax admitted. Or maybe we fight harder. Maybe we get your voice heard. Maybe we remind the system that kids like you deserve parents who won't quit, even when things get hard. How? Carter demanded. How do we fight the system? Elena looked at Jax, something passing between them. We make some noise, she said quietly. We get people to pay attention, and we make it very difficult for them to say no. I don't understand. Jax smiled grimly. Ever seen what happens when Hell's Angels decide to fight for something they believe in? No. You're about to. The Iron Brotherhood chapter met that Thursday night in their clubhouse, a converted warehouse on the east side of Sacramento that smelled like motor oil and coffee. 43 members showed up when Jax called the emergency meeting. They ranged from 22 to 67 years old, came from every background imaginable, and shared exactly two things in common. They loved motorcycles, and they protected their own. Jax stood at the front of the room with Elena beside him. Carter, Sophie, and Ethan were at Maya's apartment. This conversation needed to happen without the children present. Most of you know Elena and I have been trying to adopt for years. Jax began without preamble. We've been denied twice because of club affiliation. Now we've got 3 kids who need us. Kids the system's failed 22 times. Kids who've been rejected by every so-called normal family because they're too complicated, too broken, too much trouble. He pulled out his phone and displayed Sophie's drawing on the screen behind him. 3 small figures in darkness, 2 larger ones in light. That's what these kids dream about, being in the sunshine, having a family. And the system's about to deny them again because we ride motorcycles and wear leather. A man named Bull, 56 years old with a gray beard down to his chest, stood up. What do you need? Noise, Elena said. We need to make so much noise they can't ignore us. We need to show them who we really are, not who they think we are. We need to make it politically impossible to deny these kids a home based on prejudice. How loud we talking? Asked Reaper, the club president. National news loud, Jax said. I want every reporter in California knowing that 3 disabled kids are being denied adoption because bikers aren't considered acceptable parents. I want politicians asked why children are rotting in group homes while qualified families get rejected for wearing the wrong jackets. Reaper grinned. It wasn't a nice expression. I know some people. Let me make some calls. Within 48 hours, the story hit social media. A chapter member's daughter worked in digital marketing and knew exactly how to make content go viral. She created a video featuring photos of the Iron Brotherhood's charity work, toy drives, hospital visits, fundraising events contrasted with statistics about children aging out of foster care. The caption read, "These are the people the system says aren't good enough to be parents. These are the kids the system says aren't worth fighting for. Something's broken, and it's not the families or the children." The video had 3 million views in 2 days. News outlets picked up the story by the weekend. Local stations first, then state networks, then national coverage. Reporters showed up at the Mercer House at the clubhouse at Maya's office, demanding comments. Patricia Vance's preliminary report recommending denial hit the adoption board on Monday. By Tuesday afternoon, the board was drowning in calls from advocates, disability rights organizations, and constituents demanding to know why qualified parents were being rejected. Maya watched the media storm from her office with a mixture of terror and admiration. This is insane, she said to her supervisor. I've never seen anything like this. The Hells Angels just declared war on the foster care system, her supervisor said, looking slightly dazed. I'm not sure whether to be impressed or horrified. Both, Maya said. Definitely both. Carter learned about the media attention when a reporter approached him outside the group home. Maya had just dropped him and his siblings off after school, and a woman with a camera crew materialized before they could get inside. Carter, can we ask you a few questions about your adoption case? Carter froze. Sophie pressed against his side, clutching Mr. Hopsworth. Baby Ethan started crying in the carrier. Leave him alone, Maya snapped, stepping between them. He's a child. You don't have permission to... I'll talk, Carter interrupted. Carter, no. I said I'll talk. He looked at the reporter with those 2 old eyes. You want to know about my case? Fine. I'm 10 years old. My parents are in prison. My grandmother died. I have a baby brother who needs medical care and a sister who stopped talking because she's been rejected so many times she doesn't see the point anymore. 22 families said they wanted kids right up until they met us. Then suddenly we were too much trouble. The camera was rolling. Carter knew it and didn't care. Now we finally found people who want us. People who show up who don't care that Ethan has a feeding tube, or that Sophie won't talk, or that I'm angry all the time. People who said we're worth fighting for. And the system's trying to take that away because they ride motorcycles, because they wear leather jackets, because they don't look like what some social worker thinks parents should look like. His voice cracked. So yeah, something's broken, but it's not Jax and Elena. It's the system that would rather kids stay in group homes than go to families that actually want them. The clip went viral within hours. Carter's raw honesty, his obvious pain, the baby crying in the background, Sophie's silent presence. It was emotionally devastating. Millions of people watched a 10-year-old boy beg the system to let him have a family. Politicians started making statements. Disability advocates organized protests. The adoption board's phone lines crashed from the volume of calls. And Patricia Vance suddenly found herself the public face of everything wrong with foster care. The adoption board called an emergency hearing for the following week. Maya burst into the Mercer's house with the news, nearly frantic. "They're moving up the timeline," she said, breathless. "They want to make a decision before this media circus gets any bigger. The hearing's in 6 days." "That's good, right?" Elena asked. "I don't know," Maya admitted. "It could go either way. They might approve you to make the story go away. Or they might double down on the denial to prove they can't be pressured." Jax's expression went hard. "Then we make sure they choose option 1. Over the next 6 days, the Iron Brotherhood organized the most comprehensive character campaign Maya had ever witnessed. Letters flooded the adoption board from hospitals where Elena volunteered, from families the club had helped, from combat veterans who served with Jax, from teachers whose schools received toy donations, from children with disabilities who'd participated in adaptive ride programs. A pediatrician named Dr. Sarah Chen wrote a detailed letter about Elena's medical expertise and compassion. "In 15 years of practice, I have never met a more naturally gifted caregiver. If you deny these children placement with the Mercers based on surface prejudice rather than substantive evaluation, you will be failing both the children and the concept of family itself." A psychiatrist specializing in childhood trauma submitted an analysis of Carter's emotional state. "This child is at extreme risk. His psychological well-being depends entirely on maintaining sibling unity and establishing stable attachment. Separation or another rejection at this point could cause irreparable harm. The Mercers represent his first secure attachment opportunity in 3 years. Denying this placement for non-substantive reasons would constitute systemic abuse." The letters kept coming. Hundreds of them. Thousands. But the most powerful advocacy came from unexpected sources. Catherine, the nurse who'd stayed with Carter and Sophie when their grandmother died, somehow learned about the case. She tracked down Maya's number and called at 9 p.m. on Wednesday. "I was there the night their grandmother had her stroke," Catherine said without preamble. "I watched that little boy call 911 with more composure than most adults. I watched him comfort his sister while his whole world ended. And I watched the foster care system fail him over and over. If you let bureaucratic prejudice deny these kids a home with people who actually love them, I will personally call every news outlet in this state and tell them exactly how badly you failed these children." Maya had never been more grateful for a stranger's righteous fury. On Thursday, 3 days before the hearing, Sophie did something remarkable. They were at the Mercer house for a supervised visit when Sophie suddenly walked to the kitchen table where Elena was preparing Ethan's feeding. She picked up a marker and a piece of paper, and she drew. Not her usual pictures of darkness and separation. This time she drew a house, simple, childish, but unmistakably a home. And in the house stood 5 stick figures, 3 small, 2 large, all holding hands, all smiling. At the bottom, in careful, shaky letters, Sophie wrote 2 words, "My family." Then she looked up at Elena with tears streaming down her face and whispered the first words anyone had heard her speak in 3 months. "Please don't leave us." Elena dropped to her knees and pulled Sophie close. "Never," she whispered fiercely. "Never, sweetheart. We're staying. I promise." Jax was crying. Maya was crying. Carter stood frozen, watching his sister speak, watching this family form around them like a shield against everything that had tried to break them. Baby Ethan chose that moment to make a sound he'd never made before. A laugh, pure and delighted, reaching for Sophie like he understood something wonderful had just happened. Maya took photographs, documented everything. This was evidence, undeniable, beautiful evidence that these children were already bonding, already healing, already becoming a family. The night before the hearing, Carter couldn't sleep. He lay in his bunk at the group home listening to Sophie's breathing above him and Ethan's medical monitor beeping, and tried to prepare himself for another rejection. His phone buzzed. Jax had given him a prepaid cell phone for emergencies and goodnight texts. Carter grabbed it. The message read, "Can't sleep either. Come outside. Bring Sophie if she's awake." Carter climbed down from his bunk. Sophie was sitting up, clutching Mr. Hopsworth's eyes wide in the darkness. She'd heard the phone buzz too. "You want to go see them?" Carter whispered. Sophie nodded. They bundled baby Ethan, the group home staff were used to Carter managing his brother's care, and snuck outside. Jax's truck was parked across the street. Elena was in the passenger seat. When she saw them, she got out and opened the back door without a word. Carter climbed in with his siblings, and suddenly they were driving through Sacramento at midnight, heading nowhere in particular. "Couldn't let you spend tonight alone," Jax said quietly. "Figured you might need family." "We're not family yet," Carter said, but his voice held no conviction. "Yes, we are," Elena said firmly. "Whatever that board decides tomorrow, we're already family. They can't take that away." They drove to a lookout point outside the city where you could see the lights spread out below like stars. Jax parked and they all climbed out. Elena spread a blanket on the truck bed and they sat together, all five of them, watching the city breathe in the darkness. "I'm scared," Carter admitted. "What if they say no? What if this is just another—" "Then we appeal," Jax interrupted. "And if that doesn't work, we go to court. And if that doesn't work, we go to the media again, louder this time. We go to the governor. We go to anyone who'll listen. We don't stop, Carter. Not ever." "Why?" The question broke out of Carter like something he'd been holding back forever. "Why do you care so much? We're nobody. We're just broken kids nobody wanted." Jax turned to face him fully. "You want the truth? When I was 12, I was exactly where you are. Angry, scared, convinced I was unlovable. I'd been through 7 placements in 4 years. I'd decided that I was the problem, that something inside me was fundamentally wrong, and that's why nobody kept me." What changed? A truck driver named Pete and his wife Maria. They were older, poor, totally wrong according to every social worker who evaluated them. And they looked at me, this angry, violent, traumatized kid, and said, "That's our son." Just like that. No hesitation. They fought for me for 8 months. Went to court 3 times. Finally got a judge who cared more about love than regulations. Jax's voice got thick. "Pete died 6 years ago. Maria's in assisted living now, but I visit every week. They gave me everything, a home, a future, the understanding that I was worth fighting for, and when Elena and I lost Liam..." He stopped breathing hard. "When we lost our son, I remembered what Pete told me once. He said, 'The greatest honor of my life was being your father. Not because you were perfect, but because you were mine.'" Tears were streaming down Jax's face now. "You 3 are already ours. In every way that matters, you're our kids. That board can make it legal or not, but it doesn't change the fact that you're ours, and we're yours, and we will fight until there's nothing left to fight with." Sophie crawled into Elena's lap and wrapped her arms around her neck. Elena held her close, crying into her hair. "What if you get tired of us?" Carter whispered. "What if we're too much trouble and you change your mind?" "Then I guess we'll all be tired together," Elena said, "because parenting isn't about having easy kids. It's about showing up every day, especially on the hard days. It's about loving someone enough to stay when staying is difficult." Baby Ethan started fussing. Jax took him with practiced ease, warming a bottle from the diaper bag with the confidence of someone who'd already memorized the routine. Carter watched him feed Ethan, watched the gentleness in this big, scary-looking biker's hands. "I don't know how to be someone's kid," Carter said. "I've been taking care of them for so long, I don't know how to let someone take care of me." "That's okay," Jax said. "We'll figure it out together. You can keep protecting them, that's who you are, and we love that about you. But you don't have to do it alone anymore. You get to be 10 years old sometimes. You get to be scared and angry and confused. You get to mess up and know we'll still be here. They stayed on that hill until dawn started breaking across the eastern sky. Sophie fell asleep against Elena's shoulder. Ethan dozed in Jax's arms. Carter sat between them, watching the darkness give way to light, and let himself hope. The hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. By 8:30, the hallway outside the hearing room was packed with people. The Iron Brotherhood was there, 40 members in their formal vests, standing in silent support. Dr. Chen was there. Catherine the nurse was there. Teachers from the schools the club had supported. Families who'd received help. Parents of disabled children who participated in adaptive programs. And reporters. So many reporters. Patricia Vance arrived looking pale and defensive. The board members looked overwhelmed. This was supposed to be a routine administrative hearing. Instead, it had become a referendum on foster care policy. Carter walked in holding Sophie's hand with Elena carrying Ethan. Jax walked beside them, one hand on Carter's shoulder. Maya followed, carrying a folder 6 inches thick with supporting documentation. The board chairman, a man named Robert Winters, called the hearing to order. His voice was steady, but Carter could see the stress around his eyes. We're here to evaluate the application of Jackson and Elena Mercer to foster 3 minor children currently in state custody. Ms. Vance, please present your evaluation. Patricia stood, her hands trembling slightly. The Mercer home is physically adequate. Background checks show no criminal history. Financial documentation demonstrates stability. However, I have significant concerns about the lifestyle factors that define lifestyle factors. Robert interrupted. Patricia faltered. Mr. Mercer's affiliation with the Iron Brotherhood Hell's Angels raises questions about appropriate role modeling for vulnerable children. The motorcycle club culture, the association with what? Reaper stood up in the gallery. Say it clearly, ma'am. What exactly do you think we do? Order, Robert said, but his tone lacked conviction. No, Reaper continued. This woman's been implying we're criminals for weeks. I want her to state clearly for the record what crimes she thinks we've committed, because we've been investigated repeatedly, cleared repeatedly. We're a legitimate organization. But she keeps using words like concerns and lifestyle as code for prejudice she's not allowed to state openly. The room erupted. Board members called for order. Reporters scribbled frantically. Patricia looked like she wanted to disappear. Ms. Vance, Robert said tiredly. Do you have any substantive evidence that the Mercers would provide inadequate care? The perception. Evidence, Robert repeated. Not perception, evidence. Patricia had nothing. Her entire evaluation rested on assumptions and stereotypes, and under direct questioning, those assumptions collapsed. Dr. Chen testified next. She presented medical documentation of Elena's qualifications letters from hospital administration statistics on successful outcomes with families she'd advised. Mrs. Mercer is more qualified to handle complex medical needs than 90% of the foster parents I've worked with. She's also one of the most naturally compassionate people I've ever met. Denying her the opportunity to parent based on her husband's choice of recreation is absurd. Catherine testified about the night Elena died, about Carter's courage and Sophie's trauma. These children have been failed repeatedly. The Mercers are the first people who've proven they won't fail them. If you deny this placement, you're choosing prejudice over children's welfare. Then came the documentation Maya had compiled. Photographs of Sophie drawing at the Mercer kitchen table. Video of Ethan laughing in Jax's arms. Letters from neighbors testifying to the family's kindness. Financial records proving stability. Medical records showing Ethan's improvement under Elena's care during supervised visits. The evidence was overwhelming. The love was undeniable. The prejudice was transparent. Finally, Robert turned to Carter. Young man, do you want to say anything? Carter stood up. His legs were shaking, but his voice was steady. I've been rejected 22 times. 22 families who said they wanted kids, but didn't want us. People talk about what kids need like it's complicated, but it's not. We need someone who shows up. Someone who keeps promises. Someone who doesn't quit when things get hard. He looked at Jax and Elena. These people show up every single time. When Sophie stopped talking, Elena didn't give up. She learned sign language just in case. When Ethan had a medical emergency, Jax memorized every medication, every symptom to watch for. When I said I didn't trust them, they didn't get mad. They said they'd prove themselves however long it took. His voice cracked. You want to know if they're good parents? They're already my parents. They've been my parents since the day they decided we were worth fighting for. That paper you're deciding about, that just makes it legal. It doesn't change what's already true. Sophie stood up next to him. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face, but she looked directly at the board and whispered, "They're my family. Please don't take them away." The room went silent. Several board members were crying openly. Robert cleared his throat. "We'll recess for deliberation." The wait was 43 minutes that felt like 43 years. Carter sat in the hallway with Sophie curled against his side and Ethan sleeping in Elena's arms. Jax paced. The Iron Brotherhood stood in silent solidarity. When the board returned, Robert's face was unreadable. In the matter of the Mercer foster placement application, the board has reviewed all evidence and testimony. We find that Ms. Vance's evaluation relied heavily on subjective bias rather than objective assessment of parenting capability. Patricia's face went white. We further find that the Mercers have demonstrated exceptional qualification, commitment, and love. Therefore, the board approves immediate foster placement with the intent to adopt pending standard 6-month review. The hallway exploded. People were cheering, crying, hugging. The Iron Brotherhood erupted in celebration. Reporters surged forward with questions. Carter couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what he'd just heard. "We're yours," he whispered to Jax. "You're ours," Jax said, crying freely now. "You're ours, son. You're home." Sophie threw herself at Elena, sobbing. Baby Ethan woke up and started crying too, but happy crying, the kind that comes from too much emotion in too small a body. They were a family. Finally, impossibly beautifully, they were a family. Patricia Vance walked past them on her way out, and Elena caught her arm. "Wait." Patricia turned defensive and ashamed. "I know what you're going to say." "Thank you," Elena said quietly. Patricia blinked. "What?" "You challenged us, made us prove ourselves, fight harder, show up stronger. These kids needed parents who wouldn't quit, and you made absolutely sure that's what they got. So thank you." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. She nodded once and walked away, and Carter understood something important. Sometimes the people who challenge you the hardest end up teaching you the most about who you really are. Maya hugged them all fiercely. 6 months from now, we finalize the adoption. But honestly, you've been a family for weeks already. This just makes it official. They walked out of that building together, 5 people who'd found each other against impossible odds, who'd fought a system designed to keep them apart, who'd proven that family doesn't require permission or approval, just love and determination and the courage to keep showing up. The Iron Brotherhood formed an honor guard in the parking lot, motorcycles lined up, engines rumbling. As Jax and Elena walked through with their children, the engines roared in celebration, a sound that used to scare Carter, but now sounded like welcome, like home, like family. That night, Carter slept in his new bedroom in the Mercer house for the first time. His room had a desk for homework, shelves for books, a window overlooking the backyard. Sophie's room was next door, painted soft purple because Elena asked what color she loved. Ethan's room had all the medical equipment he needed, arranged with clinical efficiency, but decorated with warmth. Before bed, Jax and Elena came to say goodnight. Carter had never had anyone tuck him in before. "You okay?" Jax asked. "I don't know," Carter admitted. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for you to change your mind, for this to be temporary." "It's not temporary," Elena said firmly. "You're ours, forever. Even when you're 40 and we're old and gray, you'll still be ours." "What if I mess up? What if I'm too angry or too difficult or—" "Then we'll work through it together," Jax interrupted. Carter parenting isn't about having perfect kids. It's about loving imperfect humans with everything you've got. You could mess up every single day and we'd still love you. That's what family means. Something in Carter's chest, something that had been tight and hard for 3 years, finally loosened. "I love you," he whispered. "I know I'm not supposed to say that yet, but I do. You and Elena, I love you." Jax pulled him close. "We love you too, son. We have from the moment we met you, and we're going to keep loving you every single day for the rest of your life." After they left, Carter lay in the darkness and let himself cry. Not frightened tears, or angry tears, or desperate tears. Relief tears, grateful tears, home tears. From the next room, he heard Sophie singing softly to Mr. Hopsworth, the first time she'd sung since their grandmother died. Down the hall, Ethan's medical monitor beeped its steady rhythm, and underneath it, Carter heard Elena humming the same lullaby. They were home. Finally, impossibly wonderfully, they were home. And tomorrow, the real work of becoming a family would begin. The first week in the Mercer house taught Carter that happy endings were just different kinds of beginnings, and beginnings were always harder than anyone warned you about. The panic attack hit on day 3, 2 a.m. with no warning. Carter woke up gasping, convinced he was back in the group home, convinced this had all been a dream. He stumbled into the hallway and crashed into Jax, who was already moving toward his room. "Heard you thrashing," Jax said quietly. "Nightmare. I thought..." Carter couldn't breathe properly. "I thought I made it up, that you weren't real, that we were still." "You're home," Jax said firmly. "You're safe. This is real." He sat down on the hallway floor and patted the space beside him. "Come here." Carter collapsed next to him, shaking. Jax wrapped an arm around his shoulders and just sat there, solid and present, until Carter's breathing evened out. "This is going to happen a lot, isn't it?" Carter asked. "Me freaking out?" "Probably," Jax said honestly. "Trauma doesn't disappear just because life gets better. But here's the difference: you don't have to handle it alone anymore. You wake up scared, you come find me or Elena. Every single time. That's what parents are for. Even at 2 a.m. Especially at 2 a.m. Sophie's adjustment was different, but equally complicated. She started talking again, but only in whispers, and only to Elena. At school, she went completely mute, communicating through drawings and occasional sign language. The teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, called on day 4. "Sophie's struggling with social integration," she said carefully. "The other children are curious about her silence. Some are unkind about it." Elena's voice went cold. "Define unkind." "There's been some teasing. Nothing physical, but verbal comments about her being strange or stupid." "My daughter is not stupid," Elena said, each word sharp as a blade. "She's traumatized. There's a difference, and I expect your staff to educate the other children about that difference." Carter listened from the kitchen, stirring oatmeal for Ethan's breakfast, and felt something fierce and protective bloom in his chest. Elena was fighting for Sophie the way Carter had always fought for her, but better, stronger, with adult authority behind the love. "I want a meeting with you and the school counselor," Elena continued. "Today, Sophie will not be punished for her trauma response, and any child who bullies her will face consequences. Are we clear?" Mrs. Rodriguez agreed immediately. Elena hung up and saw Carter watching. "What? You're scary when you're mad," Carter said. "Good. People should be scared of messing with my kids." My kids. Carter felt those words settle into his bones like medicine. The school meeting happened that afternoon. Jax took time off work. He managed logistics for a construction company, steady employment that gave him flexibility, and they went together. The principal, a tired-looking woman named Dr. Walsh, tried to minimize the situation. "Children can be thoughtless," she said. "I'm sure it's not intentional bullying." "I don't care about intentions," Jax interrupted. "I care about impact. My daughter is being traumatized at school. That stops now. Mr. Mercer, we can't control everything children say to each other." "Then teach them better," Elena said. "Sophie has selective mutism from severe trauma. That's a recognized medical condition, not a character flaw. Your staff should be educated about trauma responses. Your students should be taught basic compassion. And if that's too much to expect, we'll find a school that can meet that very basic standard." Dr. Walsh's expression shifted. "You're right. I apologize. We should have handled this better from the start." She looked genuinely remorseful. "Let me work with Mrs. Rodriguez and our counselor. We'll implement a class discussion about trauma and disability. We'll monitor the situation closely, and we'll make sure Sophie feels safe here." "Thank you." Elena said, some of the steel leaving her voice. We're not trying to be difficult. We're trying to protect our daughter. I understand. And honestly, she's lucky to have you. Walking back to the truck, Carter said, You fight for us like you've been doing it forever. We have been, Jack said. In our hearts, we've been your parents since the day we met you. The paperwork's just catching up to reality. But reality kept throwing complications. Ethan's feeding tube got infected on day 8, requiring an emergency room visit. Elena handled it with calm expertise, but Carter watched Jax pace the waiting room with barely controlled panic. He's going to be okay, Carter said, trying to sound reassuring. Elena knows what she's doing. I know, Jack said, but his hands were shaking. When Liam died, it was so fast. 1 minute he was fine, next minute, he stopped breathing hard. I can't lose another son. I can't do that again. Carter understood something then. Adults were just as scared as kids sometimes. They just hid it better. Ethan's not going anywhere, Carter said firmly. He's too stubborn, like the rest of us. Jax laughed wetly. Yeah, you're right. Elena emerged 30 minutes later with Ethan wrapped in a blanket, looking exhausted but calm. Infection's mild. Switched his antibiotics. He'll be fine in a few days. Jax pulled her close, holding both her and Ethan like they might disappear. Carter looked away, giving them privacy for their relief. The Iron Brotherhood showed up on day 10 with a trailer full of adaptive equipment they'd been building. Reaper led the crew, 8 members who descended on the house with tools and lumber and the kind of organized chaos that came from people who worked together regularly. What's all this? Jax asked, confused. You've got a kid who needs accessibility, Bull said, already measuring the front steps. We're making it happen. By sunset, they'd installed ramps, widened doorways for potential wheelchair access. As Ethan grew, built a specialized changing table with medical supply storage, and created an adaptive play structure in the backyard that could accommodate any mobility need. Carter stood watching them work, overwhelmed. Why are they doing this? Because that's what family does. Reaper said, overhearing. He crouched to Carter's level. Your dad, Jax, he's our brother. That makes you our nephew. We take care of family. I'm not really... Yes, you are, Reaper interrupted. You think blood makes family. I've got blood relatives who wouldn't cross the street for me. But these people... He gestured at the club members working. They'd die for me. That's family. And now you're part of it. Sophie came outside carrying a tray of lemonade she and Elena had made. She walked right up to Bull, the biggest and scariest-looking member, and offered him a cup. Bull took it with such exaggerated gentleness that Sophie actually giggled. You've got good manners, little miss, Bull said seriously. Your mama's teaching you right. Sophie beamed. Then she did something that made everyone stop. She signed thank you in ASL and spoke it aloud, soft but clear. Thank you. The yard went silent. Every club member turned to look. Sophie flushed but didn't hide. You're very welcome, Bull said, his voice rough with emotion. Anytime you need anything built or fixed or protected, you call your Uncle Bull. Understand? Sophie nodded, then impulsively hugged his leg. Bull looked terrified and delighted simultaneously. Elena appeared beside Carter. She's starting to feel safe, she whispered. That's everything. But safety was fragile. On day 14, Carter came home from school to find Child Protective Services in the living room. His heart stopped. This was it. They'd changed their minds, found some reason to take them away. 23 rejections hadn't been enough. There had to be a 24th. Carter, it's okay, Jack said quickly, seeing his panic. This is just the standard 2-week check-in. Remember Maya told us? The CPS worker was a young man named David Chen, clearly nervous about being in a house full of bikers. 2 club members had stopped by and refused to leave when they saw the state vehicle outside. I'm just here to observe, David said, clutching his clipboard. Make sure the children are adjusting well. They're adjusting fine, Reaper said from the corner, arms crossed. You can see that and go. Uncle Reaper, it's okay, Carter said, surprising himself with the title. He's just doing his job. Reaper's expression softened. Yeah, okay, but we're staying. David interviewed each child separately. When he got to Carter, his questions were gentle but thorough. Are you happy here? Do you feel safe? Has anyone hurt you or made you uncomfortable? No, Carter said. I mean, yes. Yes, I'm happy. Yes, I feel safe. No, nobody's hurt me. He took a breath. I know what you're really asking. You want to know if the motorcycle club thing is a problem. It's not. These people, they're the first adults who ever kept promises. They're the first place that ever felt like home. So yeah, I'm good. Better than good. David made notes. Your baby brother has medical needs. Is that being managed appropriately? Elena's an ER nurse. Ethan's getting better care here than he ever got before. His infection cleared up in 3 days. His weight's up. He's hitting developmental milestones everyone said he'd never reach. You want medical records? She's got files 6 inches thick documenting everything. And Sophie, I understand she has selective mutism. She's talking again, Carter said. Not all the time, not to everyone, but she's talking. She laughs now. She didn't laugh for 4 months before we came here. So whatever you're worried about, don't be. This is the best thing that ever happened to us. David's interview with Sophie lasted 30 seconds. She drew him a picture of the house with 5 stick figures, sunshine overhead, hearts floating around them, and signed Happy Home. David took one look at her earnest face and obvious contentment and put his clipboard down. I've seen enough, he said. This placement is exactly what these children need. Relief crashed through Carter so hard he nearly fell over. Reaper clapped him on the shoulder, steadying him. You done interrogating our family? Reaper asked David, less hostile now. Yes, and for what it's worth, you all are doing something remarkable here. After David left, the house erupted in celebration. Elena made a huge dinner spaghetti and meatballs garlic bread salad. The Iron Brotherhood stayed because apparently family dinner now meant 12 people crowded around a table meant for 6. Carter sat between Jax and Bull, watching Sophie chatter to Elena in whispers, watching Ethan bang his spoon on the high chair tray, watching these huge, scary bikers carefully pass the salad bowl and say please and thank you, because Sophie was watching and they wanted to model good manners. This was family. Chaotic, unconventional, absolutely perfect family. But the real test came on day 19 when Carter got in a fight at school. A kid named Brandon had been making comments for days, muttered things about Sophie being retarded and Ethan being a vegetable and their parents being criminals. Carter had ignored it the way Jax taught him, walked away, stayed calm. Until Brandon said, your real parents threw you away because you're defective. Your fake parents will figure it out soon and dump you too. Carter's fist broke Brandon's nose before he consciously decided to throw the punch. The principal called Jax and Elena immediately. Carter sat in the office, knuckles bleeding, waiting for the disappointment, waiting for them to realize he was too broken, too violent, too much trouble. Jax arrived first. He took one look at Carter's defensive posture and said, What happened? I hit someone. Why? He was talking about Sophie and Ethan. Said we were defective. Said you'd throw us away like our real parents did. Jax's expression went dangerous. Where is this kid? Nurse's office, the principal said quickly. Mr. Mercer, violence is never acceptable. What did you do when my son reported this kid's harassment? Jax interrupted. I wasn't aware. So, a student was being systematically bullied, told his siblings were slurs, told his family would abandon him, and your staff noticed nothing. Jax's voice was quiet, which somehow made it scarier. That's a failure of supervision. My son responded to sustained harassment. That's not random violence. That's a traumatized child defending his family after adults failed to protect him. Elena arrived, then assessed Carter's bleeding knuckles, and immediately went into nurse mode. Let me see. Okay, nothing broken. We'll clean this at home. Mrs. Mercer, your son broke another child's nose. And I'll pay the medical bills, Elena said calmly. But let's be very clear about what happened here. Carter was defending his disabled siblings from targeted harassment. The other child was spreading hate speech about vulnerable children. Those are not equivalent behaviors. The principal looked overwhelmed. We have a zero-tolerance policy. Then enforce it on the kid who was bullying, Jax said. Carter's suspended fine. But so is the other kid, and there's a school-wide discussion about disability discrimination. Otherwise, we're talking to a lawyer about your failure to provide a safe educational environment." They left with Carter suspended for 3 days. In the truck, Carter waited for the lecture about violence being wrong, about disappointment, about how he'd embarrassed them. "I'm sorry," he said preemptively. "I know I shouldn't have hit him. I know you're mad." "I'm not mad," Jack said. Carter blinked. "What? I'm not mad. I'm proud. I broke his nose." "Yeah, you did. And violence isn't the answer. We'll talk about better ways to handle situations like that. But son, you defended your family. You protected Sophie and Ethan. That took courage." "But I got in trouble." "Sometimes doing the right thing gets you in trouble," Elena said. "The system isn't always fair. That doesn't mean you were wrong." Carter's eyes filled with tears. "I thought you'd be disappointed. Thought maybe you'd realize I'm too much trouble." Jax pulled over and turned to face him. "Listen to me carefully. You could get suspended every week for the rest of the school year, and we'd still love you. You could mess up every single day, and we'd still be your parents. You're not too much trouble. You're exactly the right amount of our kid." Something in Carter broke open. Then something that had been holding him rigid and terrified since the day his parents were arrested. He sobbed like he hadn't cried since he was 6, and Jax held him while Elena rubbed his back, and they sat in that truck for 20 minutes while Carter fell apart and discovered he could fall apart safely now. "I love you," he gasped between sobs. "I love you so much, and I'm so scared you'll leave." "We're not leaving," Jax said fiercely. "Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever. You're stuck with us for life, kid." The suspension ended up being a blessing. Carter spent 3 days at home with his family, helping Elena with Ethan's physical therapy exercises, teaching Sophie new signs, learning from Jax how to change motorcycle oil. Normal things. Family things. On day 2 of the suspension, Maya came for the monthly check-in. She found Carter in the garage with Jax, both of them covered in grease, arguing companionably about the best way to adjust a carburetor. "Everything okay?" Maya asked. "Perfect," Carter said, then reconsidered. "Actually, no, not perfect, but good, real good." Maya smiled. "That's honest. I appreciate that." Inside, she observed Sophie reading with Elena, both of them curled on the couch with Ethan between them. Sophie was reading aloud slowly with long pauses, but reading. Elena praised every word like it was a miracle. "The progress is remarkable," Maya said. "Sophie's talking more. Ethan's thriving. Carter's learning to trust. This placement is exceeding every expectation." "We're just doing what parents do," Elena said, "showing up, staying consistent, loving them through the hard parts. Most parents quit when it gets hard." "Then they weren't really parents," Jack said, appearing with Carter. "They were people playing house. This isn't a game. These are our kids." Maya looked at Carter. "You doing okay? I heard about the fight at school." "Yeah," Carter said. "It sucked. But Jax and Elena didn't freak out. They just helped me figure out better ways to handle it." "Better than breaking noses," Maya teased gently. "I mean, that was pretty effective," Carter said, grinning. "But yeah, we're working on it." After Maya left, the Iron Brotherhood showed up for what was apparently becoming a weekly tradition: family dinner and motorcycle maintenance lessons. Sophie had started drawing elaborate pictures of motorcycles, and Bull was teaching her about different engine types with the patience of a saint. Carter found himself standing with Reaper, watching his sister explain her drawing to a group of large, scary-looking men who listened like she was delivering a doctoral dissertation. "You ever think your life would look like this?" Reaper asked. "No," Carter admitted. "A month ago I thought we'd be separated and in group homes forever. Now I'm watching my selective mute sister give motorcycle lectures to Hell's Angels." Reaper laughed. "Life's weird, kid. The family you need doesn't always look like what you expected." "Did you have family growing up?" "Foster care till I aged out at 18, never got adopted, joined the club at 22. These people saved my life." Reaper looked at him seriously. "That's why we show up for you 3, because we know what it's like to be alone. And we know what it's like when someone finally says you're worth keeping." That night, after everyone left and the house was quiet, Carter did something he hadn't done since before his parents went to prison. He prayed. Not to any specific god, his family had never been religious, but just to the universe, to fate, to whatever force had brought them to this moment. "Thank you," he whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for Jax and Elena. Thank you for this family. Please let it last. Please let this be real." From the doorway, Jax's voice came soft. "It is real, and it's lasting, forever. I didn't hear you come in. I was checking on you. Old habit from when Liam was little." Jax came in and sat on the edge of the bed. "You know, after we lost him, I didn't think I'd ever be a father again. Thought that chance was gone. Then you three showed up and reminded me that love doesn't run out. It just finds new forms." "Do you think Liam would have liked us?" Carter asked. "He would have loved you," Jax said immediately. "He would have taught Sophie all his favorite songs. He would have read to Ethan every night. He would have thought having a big brother was the coolest thing ever." His voice got thick. "And I think wherever he is, he's happy his dad gets to be a dad again." Carter hugged him, then fierce and tight. Jax hugged back with the careful strength of someone who understood how fragile kids could be, even when they pretended to be tough. "I'm glad I'm yours," Carter whispered. "I'm glad you're mine too, son. I'm so damn glad." The 1-month mark hit on a Tuesday. Elena made a cake chocolate with terrible frosting because she really couldn't bake, and the whole extended family crammed into the house to celebrate. "1 month down, forever to go," Jax announced, raising a glass of sparkling cider. Sophie climbed onto Elena's lap and said clearly enough for everyone to hear, "Mama." The room went silent. Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Say that again, baby." "Mama," Sophie repeated. Then she pointed at Jax. "Daddy?" Elena burst into tears. Jax started crying. Half the Iron Brotherhood got misty-eyed. Carter felt his chest expand with something too big to name. "Yeah," he said, his own voice breaking. "That's right, Sophie. That's our mama and daddy." Ethan, as if understanding the importance of the moment, chose that second to say his first clear word, "Dada." Jax nearly collapsed. He scooped Ethan out of the high chair and held him close, sobbing into his hair. Elena wrapped her arms around both of them. Sophie wiggled down and grabbed Carter's hand, pulling him into the family huddle. They stood there together, 5 people who'd found each other against impossible odds, and Carter understood that this was what he'd been fighting for all along. Not perfection, not a life without problems, just this, a family that stayed, a family that fought for each other, a family that chose love even when love was complicated. "Forever," Carter whispered. "Forever," his parents echoed. And for the first time in his life, Carter believed it. The nightmare came back on month 2, worse than before. Carter woke screaming, convinced he was in the courthouse again, hearing that they'd be separated. He ran to Sophie's room and found her already awake, trembling, clutching Mr. Hopsworth so tight the seams were splitting. "They're not taking us away," Carter whispered, climbing into bed beside her. "We're safe. We're staying." But Sophie shook her head, tears streaming. She signed frantically. "What if they die? What if something happens and we lose them too?" Carter had no answer because he'd been thinking the same thing. Every time Elena left for work, every time Jax rode his motorcycle, Carter's chest tightened with terror. Losing people who loved you was worse than never being loved at all. Jax appeared in the doorway. "Heard you both. Come on." He led them downstairs where Elena was already making hot chocolate despite it being 3 a.m. They all sat at the kitchen table, Ethan sleeping in his carrier nearby, and Jax said, "Talk to me. What's going on?" "We're scared," Carter admitted. "What if you die? What if you leave us like everyone else?" Elena reached across the table. "Sweetheart, we can't promise we'll never die. That would be lying. But we can promise that we've made legal arrangements. If something happens to us, you go to Reaper and his wife. After that bull, then 5 other families from the club. You will never be alone again. Ever." "You planned for that," Carter whispered. "The day the adoption was approved," Jax said. "We updated our wills, named guardians, set up trust funds. You 3 are protected legally, financially, emotionally. We've built you a safety net so big you'd never fall through it." Sophie signed. "You really thought about everything." "Baby girl, you're our children," Elena said. "Of course we thought about everything." But the fear didn't disappear overnight. It manifested in strange ways. Carter started hoarding food in his room. Sophie regressed to not talking at school again. Ethan cried whenever Elena left his sight even for a minute. The therapist they'd started seeing, Dr. Nina Patel, called it attachment trauma. "They're bonding with you, which is wonderful, but bonding means they have something to lose now. That's terrifying for children who've lost everything before." "How do we fix it?" Jax asked desperately. "You don't fix it. You live through it. You stay consistent. You prove day after day that you're not going anywhere. Eventually, their nervous systems will believe what their brains already know, that they're safe." The proving took months. In month 3, Carter got sick with the flu. Proper sick fever of 103 couldn't keep anything down, delirious with fever dreams. He woke up crying at one point, convinced Jax and Elena had left him at the hospital. "I'm right here," Jax said, wiping his face with a cool cloth. "I've been here for 18 hours. I'm not going anywhere." "You should go home," Carter mumbled. "I'm gross." "You're my kid. I don't care about gross." Elena took the night shift, sleeping in a chair beside Carter's bed, waking every time he stirred. When Carter's fever finally broke on day 4, he found her still there, exhausted but present. "You stayed," he said, awed. "Of course I stayed. You're my son. Where else would I be?" Something in Carter shifted. Not fixed. Trauma didn't fix that fast, but softened. Maybe they really weren't leaving. Sophie's breakthrough came during month 4 at her first art show. The school was displaying student work, and Sophie had created an entire series of drawings showing her journey from darkness to light. The final piece showed 5 people on a motorcycle, arms outstretched, riding toward the sun. Elena stood in front of it, crying. "It's beautiful, baby." Sophie tugged her sleeve and whispered, "It's us. It's our family." "I know, sweetheart, I know." A woman approached another parent and said with obvious disdain, "Which one is yours?" "The motorcycle series," Elena said proudly. The woman's expression soured. "Oh, you're the biker family. I heard about you." "And what did you hear?" Elena's voice went dangerous. "That you're Hell's Angels, that those children were placed with you because of some media stunt, that it's inappropriate for children to be exposed to that lifestyle." Sophie's face crumpled. Elena saw it, and something in her snapped. "Those children have names. Carter, Sophie, and Ethan. And they're not exposed to anything except love, stability, and a community that actually shows up for them. Which is more than I can say for whatever judgmental nonsense you're exposing your kids to." "How dare you? How dare I? How dare you? You look at my daughter's art showing her healing from trauma, and your first response is judgment about her family. That says everything about you and nothing about us." The other parents had stopped to watch. Sophie pressed against Elena's leg, and Elena automatically wrapped an arm around her. "My daughter was selectively mute from trauma when we got her," Elena continued loud enough for everyone to hear. "She'd been rejected by 22 families who thought she was too broken. Now she talks, she laughs, she creates art, she thrives. And if you think that's inappropriate, you can take your prejudice and—" "That's enough," the principal said, appearing suddenly. But she was looking at the other woman, not Elena. "Mrs. Harrison, perhaps you should move along." Mrs. Harrison left in a huff. Elena was shaking with rage. "I'm sorry," Dr. Walsh said quietly. "That was unacceptable. For what it's worth, Sophie's progress has been extraordinary. You're doing remarkable work with these children." After everyone left, Sophie looked up at Elena and said clearly, "Thank you for defending me, Mama." Elena knelt down. "Always, baby, always. Nobody gets to make you feel small. Not ever. Even when you're not there. Especially when I'm not there. Because I've taught you that you're worth defending. So if anyone makes you feel bad, you tell them your mama said they're wrong." Sophie smiled. "Okay." But the biggest challenge came in month 5 when Ethan got pneumonia and ended up in pediatric ICU. It happened fast. A cold turned serious overnight. Elena recognized the symptoms immediately and rushed him to the ER where she worked. By the time Jax arrived with Carter and Sophie, Ethan was on oxygen and struggling to breathe. "Is he going to die?" Carter asked, his voice small and terrified. "No," Elena said firmly. "He's going to be fine. But it's scary right now, I know." They camped at the hospital for 3 days. The Iron Brotherhood rotated through bringing food and coffee and support. Bull sat with Sophie, teaching her to braid leather cord for jewelry while they waited. Reaper brought homework for Carter and helped him stay on top of schoolwork. On day 2, Ethan took a turn for the worse. His oxygen levels dropped. They had to intubate him, put him on a ventilator. Carter watched through the ICU window as machines breathed for his baby brother, and something inside him shattered. "He's going to die," Carter said flatly. "Everyone dies. Everyone leaves." Jax grabbed his shoulders. "Look at me. Ethan is not dying. He's fighting, and we're fighting with him, all of us. You can't promise that. You can't promise he'll be okay." "No, I can't. But I can promise we'll face whatever happens together, as a family. You're not alone in this, Carter. You don't have to carry this fear by yourself." Carter broke down, then sobbing in the hospital hallway while Jax held him, and Sophie cried quietly, and Elena fought in the ICU to save Ethan's life. The breakthrough came on day 3. Ethan's oxygen levels stabilized. They extubated him. By evening, he was breathing on his own, weak but alive. Elena came out of the ICU looking destroyed but victorious. "He's okay. He's going to be okay." Carter ran to her and she caught him, both of them crying with relief. Sophie joined the hug, then Jax wrapped around all of them, and they stood in that hospital corridor holding each other like shipwreck survivors. "I thought we'd lose him," Carter whispered. "But we didn't. He's tough, like his big brother." That night, while Ethan slept in recovery, Carter sat beside his bed and made a promise. "I'm going to protect you forever, you and Sophie. We're going to grow up together. We're going to have a real life. I promise." Ethan's tiny hand curled around Carter's finger, and Carter understood something fundamental. Loving people was terrifying because you could lose them. But not loving them, that was worse. That was choosing to be alone before life forced it on you. Month 6 brought the final adoption hearing. The formal, legal, permanent kind. Maya had prepared them for months, but Carter still felt sick with nerves. "What if they change their minds?" he asked the night before. "What if the judge says no?" "Then we appeal," Elena said calmly. "And we keep fighting until we win." "But Carter, honey, this is a formality. You've been ours for 6 months. This just makes it official." The courthouse was the same one where this had all started, where Carter had said they'd rather die than be separated. He walked in, holding Sophie's hand with Jax carrying Ethan, and felt like he'd traveled 1,000 miles from that terrified 10-year-old. Judge Patterson presided, different from the original judge, but Maya said she was fair. The courtroom was packed. Iron Brotherhood members filled 3 rows. Elena's hospital colleagues were there, teachers from the school, Dr. Patel, even Catherine, the nurse who'd stayed with them when their grandmother died. "This is a finalization hearing for the adoption of Carter, Sophie, and Ethan by Jackson and Elena Mercer," Judge Patterson began. "I've reviewed the case file extensively. The progress these children have made is remarkable." She looked at Carter. "Young man, would you like to say anything?" Carter stood. His legs were shaking, but his voice was steady. 6 months ago, I didn't believe in families anymore. I thought we were too broken for anyone to want us. Then Jax and Elena showed up and proved me wrong. They didn't just adopt us because they felt sorry for us. They chose us. They fought for us. They loved us, even when we were hard to love." His voice cracked. "They taught Sophie it was safe to talk again. They taught Ethan he could trust people to meet his needs. They taught me that being scared doesn't mean you're broken, it means you're human. And they did all that while the whole world told them they weren't good enough to be our parents." He looked at Jax and Elena. "But they were wrong. You're perfect. You're exactly what we needed. And I don't want to be Carter Patterson anymore. I want to be Carter Mercer. I want to be yours legally, officially, permanently. Please." Judge Patterson was crying. Half the courtroom was crying. Elena was sobbing into Jax's shoulder. Sophie, Judge Patterson said gently, do you have anything to add? Sophie stood up. She walked to the judge's bench with Mr. Hopsworth clutched tight. She didn't speak. Public speaking was still too hard, but she held up a drawing she'd made. It showed two small figures and a baby standing in darkness. Above them, two larger figures reached down with hands glowing like light. Between the two groups, the word family was written in careful childish letters. Is this your family? Judge Patterson asked. Sophie nodded vigorously. Then she turned to Elena and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, my mama and daddy. The courtroom erupted. People were openly crying now. Judge Patterson had to use her gavel to restore order. Based on all evidence testimony and the clear well-being of these children, I'm granting the petition for adoption. As of today, Carter, Sophie, and Ethan are legally, permanently, and irrevocably the children of Jackson and Elena Mercer. Congratulations to the family. The gavel came down. It was done. They were a family. Really, truly, legally, a family. Carter felt like he was floating. Sophie launched herself at Elena, who caught her and spun her around. Jax was kissing Ethan's head over and over. The Iron Brotherhood was cheering loud enough to shake the walls. Maya hugged Carter tight. You did it. You made it. We made it, Carter corrected. All of us together. The celebration moved to the house where the Iron Brotherhood had prepared a massive party. There was food, music, people everywhere. Someone had made a banner, Congratulations, Mercer family. Carter stood watching his sister dance with Bull, watching his baby brother get passed around between massive bikers who held him like he was made of glass, watching his parents. His permanent legal parents smile so hard their faces must have hurt. Reaper appeared beside him. How's it feel? Scary, Carter admitted. Good, but scary. Like maybe I'm happy enough that something bad has to happen to balance it out. That's trauma talking, Reaper said. Real life doesn't work that way. You're allowed to be happy without waiting for disaster. You're allowed to have a family that stays. I'm still learning that. You will. Give it time. Reaper clapped his shoulder. Welcome to the family, nephew. Official and permanent now. That night, after everyone left and the house was quiet, Jax and Elena tucked in all three children, like they'd been doing it forever. But tonight felt different. Tonight, it was legal. Tonight, the paperwork matched reality. We're really yours now, Carter said. Like officially. You were always ours, Jax said. From the moment we met you at that park. But yeah, it's nice to have the paperwork match. What if I mess up? What if I do something terrible and you regret adopting me? Then we'll work through it together, Elena said. Because that's what families do. They stay. Even when things are hard. Especially when things are hard. Sophie was already asleep, exhausted from the emotional day. Ethan was snoring softly in his crib. Carter lay in bed, feeling the weight of permanence settle over him like a blanket, warm and secure and slightly suffocating in its intensity. I love you, he whispered. We love you too, his parents said together. And Carter let himself believe it. Not just intellectually, but bone deep, soul deep. They loved him. They chose him. They were staying. The next morning, Carter woke to Sophie jumping on his bed. We're Mercers, she shouted. We're really, really Mercers. Yeah, Carter said, grinning. We really are. Breakfast was chaos, pancakes and laughter, and Ethan throwing food everywhere. Normal family chaos. The kind Carter had dreamed about for years. But later that morning, while everyone was cleaning up, there was a knock on the door. Elena answered it, and her expression changed completely. Carter came to see who it was, and froze. A woman stood on the porch, thin and worn-looking, with Carter's exact eyes. Behind her stood a man with Sophie's nose and jaw. Hello, Carter, his mother said quietly. I know you probably don't want to see me, but I got out early. Good behavior, and I needed to. She stopped because Carter had slammed the door in her face and was now standing in the hallway, shaking violently. Jax was there instantly, hands on Carter's shoulders. Who is that? Jax demanded. My birth parents. Carter gasped. They got out. They came back. They're going to want us back. They're going to take us away. Sophie started crying. Elena scooped her up immediately. "Nobody's taking you anywhere," Jax said fiercely. "You're ours legally. They signed away parental rights. They have no claim on you." "But what if—" "No what ifs. You're our children. Permanently. They can't change that." But through the door came his mother's voice. "Please, Carter, just 5 minutes. I just want to explain. To apologize, please." Carter looked at Jax, terrified. Jax's expression was grim. "You don't have to talk to them. Ever. They have no rights here." "But maybe I should," Carter said slowly. "Maybe I need to hear what they have to say, so I can stop wondering." "You sure?" "No, but I want to try." They moved to the porch adults only first with Carter watching from inside. His birth parents looked smaller than he remembered, worn down. His father had more gray hair. His mother looked like she'd aged a decade in 3 years. "We don't want to disrupt their lives," his mother was saying. "We know we don't have rights anymore. We signed those away. But we got clean in prison. We did the programs. We got our lives together. And we wanted them to know that we're sorry. That we failed them. That they deserved better." "They got better," Jax said coldly. "They have a family now. A family that doesn't choose drugs over them." "I know. And I'm glad. I'm so glad they have you." His mother was crying. "But I gave birth to them. I loved them. I still love them. And I just wanted them to know that before I disappear from their lives forever." Elena appeared beside Jax. "What do you want, really?" "To say goodbye properly," his mother said. "To tell them I'm sorry. To let them know that I'm sober, now that I'm trying to be better, even though it's too late for them. That's all. I promise." Carter opened the door and stepped out. His mother gasped. "You're so big," she whispered. "You were 7 last time I saw you. Now you're God, you're almost a teenager." "I'm 11, Carter said flatly. "I take care of Sophie and Ethan because you couldn't, because you chose drugs, because you failed us." His mother flinched, but nodded. "You're right. I did. I failed all of you. And I'm sorry doesn't even begin to cover it." "Why did you come here?" Carter demanded. "Why now?" "Because I needed you to know that it wasn't your fault. None of it was your fault. You were good kids. You deserved good parents. We were just too sick to be what you needed. Are you better now?" "I'm trying. I'm clean. I have a job. I'm going to meetings. But I'm not. I'll never be what you deserved. Your new parents. They're what you deserved. They're what I should have been." Carter felt tears streaming down his face. "I hate you. I hate you for what you did to us, for making us feel like we weren't worth staying clean for." "I know. You should hate me. I hate me too. But I also," Carter's voice broke, "I also wanted you to love us enough. I wanted you to choose us. And you didn't. I couldn't, not then. But if I could go back—" "You can't," Carter interrupted. "You can't go back. And we don't need you anymore. We have real parents now. Parents who chose us. Parents who stay." His father finally spoke. "That's good. That's what we wanted for you." "You wanted to ease your guilt," Carter said harshly. "That's why you came." "Maybe," his mother admitted. "Maybe we did. But we also genuinely wanted you to know you're loved. That we failed, but not because you weren't enough. You were always enough." Sophie appeared in the doorway, clutching Mr. Hopsworth. She looked at their birth parents with no recognition at all. She'd been too young when they were arrested. "That's not my mama and daddy," she said clearly, pointing at Jax and Elena. "They are." Carter's birth mother sobbed. "I know, sweetheart, and I'm glad you have them." Elena moved forward, then protective and fierce. "I think you should go now. You've said what you needed to say. These children have been through enough without you disrupting their healing." "Of course." Carter's mother looked at him one more time. "I hope you have a good life, Carter. I hope all 3 of you do. You deserve everything good." They left. Carter watched them walk away and felt something inside him settle. They'd come back, but he hadn't wanted them. He had parents already. Real ones. Parents who stayed. "You okay?" Jax asked. "Yeah," Carter said, surprised to find it was true. "Yeah, I am, because they're not my parents anymore. You are." "That's right," Jax said firmly. "We are. Permanently." They went inside together. Sophie climbed into Elena's lap for comfort. Ethan needed a diaper change. Regular family tasks resumed, and Carter understood that the ordinary moments, the daily routines, the consistent presence, this was what made a family, not biology. Not obligation. Choice. Daily consistent, unwavering choice. That night, Carter wrote in the journal Dr. Patel had given him, "My birth parents came back today. I thought I'd want them, but I didn't, because I already have parents, real ones, the kind who don't leave, the kind who chose me on purpose. I'm a Mercer now, permanently, and that's exactly who I want to be." He closed the journal and went to sleep in his own bed, in his own room, in his own house, with his own family. And for the first time in his entire life, Carter felt completely, utterly, permanently home. 3 years passed like water through fingers, fast and slow, simultaneously, the way childhood moves when you're finally safe enough to live it properly. Carter turned 14 this summer. Everything changed again. He'd grown 6 inches. His voice had dropped, and he'd stopped flinching every time someone raised their voice. He played basketball. Now had friends who came over after school, got decent grades without the desperate perfection that used to drive him. He was, for the first time in his life, just a regular kid. Sophie was 10 and talked constantly, making up for those lost silent months with endless chatter about art and books and the elaborate fantasy worlds she created. She still carried Mr. Hopsworth everywhere, but now he was more companion than security blanket. She'd started a support group at school for kids with trauma histories because Sophie had decided that helping others heal was how she'd honor her own journey. Ethan was nearly 4, walking with leg braces and proving every doctor who'd said he'd never walk wrong. His feeding tube was gone. His speech was delayed, but improving daily. He was stubborn, joyful, and utterly fearless, the kind of kid who'd try to climb anything and laugh when he fell. The Mercer house had expanded, not physically, but in population. Over 3 years, Jax and Elena had fostered 6 other children, kids the system labeled unadoptable, a teenager with severe PTSD, twin boys with developmental disabilities, a girl who'd aged out of care at 18 with nowhere to go. Each stayed as long as they needed, and the Iron Brotherhood showed up for every single one the way they'd shown up for Carter, Sophie, and Ethan. The Adaptive Ride Project had grown too. What started as a few modified motorcycles had become a full non-profit organization. They ran monthly rides for disabled kids, taught adaptive motorcycle maintenance, and created equipment that removed barriers to participation. Carter volunteered every weekend teaching younger kids what Bull and Reaper had taught him. On a Saturday in July, Carter was in the garage working on an adaptive sidecar when Jax came in looking shaken. "We got a call from Maya," Jax said. "There's a situation." Carter's stomach dropped. "What kind of situation?" "A family, 4 kids. The youngest is a baby. Oldest is 12. Their foster placement fell through. The 12-year-old has been taking care of the younger ones, trying to keep them together. Sound familiar?" Carter's chest tightened. "They need help. They need a temporary safe house while Maya finds long-term placement. I told her we'd take them, but I wanted to check with you 3 first. These are your home too. When do they arrive?" "Tomorrow morning." That night at dinner, Jax explained the situation. Carter watched Sophie's face light up at the idea of helping other kids. Ethan, not fully understanding but picking up on the emotion, shouted, "More family." "Temporary family," Elena corrected gently, "just until Maya finds them a permanent home." But Carter understood what his parents were really saying. These kids would be like them once. Scared, desperate, trying to hold their siblings together against impossible odds. How could they say no? The Martinez children arrived at 9 a.m. Maria was 12, thin and wary, with eyes that assessed every exit. Carlos and Luis were twin 8-year-olds, identical except for the scar on Carlos's cheek. Baby Rosa was 18 months clinging to Maria like she might disappear. Carter recognized the look on Maria's face immediately. It was the same expression he'd worn 3 years ago. Fierce protectiveness mixed with bone-deep exhaustion and the terrible knowledge that she was failing. "Hi," Carter said quietly. "I'm Carter. That's my sister Sophie and my brother Ethan. I know you're scared. I was scared too when I got here." "We're not staying long," Maria said defensively. "As soon as Maya finds us a real placement, we're leaving." "This is a real placement," Sophie said gently. "Temporary, but real. You're safe here." Maria's eyes filled with tears. She blinked away furiously. "I don't need safe. I need to keep my family together." "Then we'll help you do that," Jack said. "That's what we do here. We keep families together." The first week was rough. Maria refused to sleep, convinced something bad would happen if she let her guard down. The twins were hyperactive and destructive, testing boundaries constantly. Baby Rosa screamed whenever Maria left her sight. "This is what we were like," Sophie said one night watching Maria pace the hallway at 2 a.m. "Scared and angry and not trusting anything." "Yeah," Carter agreed. "It took us months to believe Jax and Elena weren't going anywhere." "Should we talk to her?" "I don't think she's ready to listen yet. She needs to see it first, see that they stay." But Carter was wrong. Maria was ready to talk, she just needed the right person to listen. It happened on day 8. Carter found Maria crying in the garage at midnight. She was holding baby Rosa, who'd finally fallen asleep, and her shoulders were shaking with silent sobs. "Hey," Carter said softly. "You okay?" "I can't do this anymore," Maria whispered. "I can't keep them safe. I'm 12, I'm just a kid. I can't be their parent." Carter sat beside her. "I was 10 when I took over caring for Sophie and Ethan. 10 years old trying to be their parent, failing constantly, terrified every single day. I know exactly how you feel." "How did you stop being scared?" "I didn't. I'm still scared sometimes. But I learned I didn't have to do it alone anymore. That's the difference between then and now. I have backup." Maria looked at him with desperate hope. "They're really going to let us stay together? I don't know what Maya's working on for permanent placement, but while you're here, you've got protection, you've got help. You get to be 12 for a minute instead of carrying the whole world." "I don't know how to be 12. I've been a parent since I was 9. "Then we'll teach you. Me and Sophie and even Ethan. We'll show you how to be a kid again." Maria started crying harder. "What if they separate us? What if nobody wants all 4 of us? Then these people," Carter gestured toward the house where his parents were sleeping, "will fight like hell to keep you together. That's what they do. They fight for kids nobody else wants. They won that fight for us. They'll win it for you too." "You really believe that?" "I'm here. Aren't I, me and Sophie and Ethan? We were rejected 23 times before Jax and Elena. Everyone said we were too complicated, too broken, too much. But they didn't give up. They built an entire army to fight for us. They'll do the same for you." Maria looked at baby Rosa sleeping in her arms. "I just want them to be safe, to have a chance." "They will. I promise." Over the next weeks, the Martinez children started settling in. The twins stopped destroying things and started playing with Ethan. Baby Rosa transferred some of her attachment from Maria to Elena, which was healthy, even though it terrified Maria. And Maria herself started sleeping through the night, started smiling occasionally, started being 12 instead of 25. The Iron Brotherhood showed up for them the way they'd shown up for everyone. Bull taught the twins woodworking. Reaper took Maria on motorcycle rides that let her feel free for the first time in years. The whole club rallied around these 4 kids, who needed exactly what they gave best: unwavering, unconditional protection. But finding permanent placement proved harder than anyone expected. Week 3 became week 6. Week 6 became week 10. Every family who expressed interest backed out when they learned about 4 siblings with complex trauma histories. "This is familiar," Carter said to Maya during one of her visits. "You're running out of options, aren't you?" Maya looked exhausted. "I'm trying, Carter, but 4 kids ages 12 down to toddler, all needing trauma-informed care. The pool of qualified families is minuscule." "What about Jax and Elena? Maya blinked. What about them? They're qualified. They're already bonding with the kids. Why not make it permanent? Carter, they already have 3 children. Adding 4 more would make 7 kids. That's not realistic. It's not realistic for regular families. But we're not a regular family. We're a Hells Angels family with an entire club backing us up. We've got built-in support, backup, childcare, financial resources from the nonprofit. We can handle it. That's not your decision to make. I know, but maybe someone should ask them, because Maria's starting to hope, and if you rip that away when she's finally feeling safe, you'll destroy her, just like I was almost destroyed. Maya promised to think about it. That night, Carter brought it up at family dinner. What if the Martinez kids stayed permanently? He asked. What if we adopted them too? Jax and Elena exchanged a long look. Finally, Elena said, We've been discussing that possibility, but it's a huge decision. It affects you 3 as much as us. They're us, Sophie said simply. 3 years ago, that was us. Scared kids nobody wanted. If we have the room and the resources to help them, how can we say no? 7 kids is a lot, Jax said carefully. It would change everything about our family dynamic. Good, Ethan said, surprising everyone. He didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. More family is good. We have so much love. We should share. Carter felt his throat tighten. Ethan's right. We've got more love than we know what to do with. And the Iron Brotherhood will help. They always help. Let me talk to Maria first, Elena said. Make sure that's what she wants. This can't be us imposing our will. She needs agency in this decision. Elena found Maria in the backyard pushing Rosa on the baby swing. Can we talk? Maria tensed immediately. Are you sending us away? Actually, I wanted to ask if you'd like to stay. Permanently. Maria went completely still. Jax and I have been talking. We'd like to adopt you, all 4 of you. Make you Mercers same as Carter, Sophie, and Ethan. But only if that's what you want. This is your choice. Maria started crying. Why would you want us? We're so much work. We're traumatized and difficult. And you're children who need a family, Elena interrupted. That's all that matters. So what do you say? Want to be ours? Yes, Maria sobbed. God, yes. Please don't change your mind, please. We won't. That's a promise. The adoption process for the Martinez children took 8 months faster than Carter's had been because the system had learned from previous mistakes. By the time Maria turned 13, the paperwork was finalized. 4 more children became Mercers. 7 kids, total ages 4 to 14, living in organized chaos, held together by love and determination and an entire motorcycle club's worth of backup support. The house got crowded. They converted the garage to a bedroom for the twins. Maria and Sophie shared a room by choice, becoming sisters in fact, as well as law. Carter taught Carlos and Luis everything about being protective older brothers. Ethan and Rosa formed an inseparable duo, the babies of the family who ruled everyone with adorable tyranny. It was messy and loud and complicated and absolutely perfect. When Carter turned 16, the Iron Brotherhood threw him a massive party at the clubhouse. Everyone was there, all his siblings, his parents, every club member, Maya, who'd become family too, Dr. Patel, who'd guided them through so much healing, teachers and friends, and community members whose lives had been touched by this impossible family. Reaper gave a speech. 6 years ago, Jax and Elena got told they weren't good enough to be parents. 3 years after that, they did it again. Now they've got 7 kids who were all labeled unadoptable. Every single one of these children was rejected by the system, told they were too broken, too difficult, too much. And these 2 people, these Hells Angels bikers, everyone was scared of, they said, we'll take them all. That's what heroism looks like. Bull added, and these kids, every single one of them proved that love doesn't fix trauma overnight, but it gives you the foundation to heal. They're living proof that family isn't about biology or perfect circumstances. It's about showing up, staying, fighting for each other. Carter stood up, his voice stronger now than it had been at 11. 6 years ago, I was convinced I was unlovable. I'd been rejected so many times I believed something was fundamentally wrong with me. Then these people showed up, people the system said were dangerous, unsuitable, wrong, and they loved me anyway. They loved all of us anyway. He looked at his siblings. Maria, Carlos, Luis, Rosa, you were us 3 years ago, scared and desperate and trying to survive. Now look at you. Look at us. We're not just surviving, we're thriving, because someone decided we were worth fighting for. Maria stood up beside him. I want to say something. She was shaking but determined. Before I came here, I thought my job was to hold my family together no matter what it cost me. I was 12 years old, playing parent, failing, constantly drowning in responsibility. Then this family showed me that I didn't have to do it alone. That asking for help wasn't weakness. That being a kid was okay. Her voice broke. 3 years ago, I wanted to die because I couldn't keep my siblings safe. Now I want to live because I finally understand what safe feels like. That's what this family gave me. That's what they give everyone who's lucky enough to be chosen by them. Sophie added, we started a nonprofit last year, the Unexpected Families Project. We find non-traditional families, single parents, LGBTQ couples, older parents, yes, motorcycle clubs, and we help them navigate adoption. We provide training, legal support, community connection. Because Jax and Elena proved that the people society rejects are often exactly who vulnerable children need. Carter continued, in 3 years, we've helped place 47 children with families who were previously denied. 47 kids who were labeled unadoptable now have permanent homes. That's the legacy of this family. Not just saving us, multiplying that salvation outward. Jax was crying openly. Elena too. The whole clubhouse was crying, these tough bikers with tears streaming down their faces. You 3, you 7, Jax corrected himself. You're the greatest honor of my life, every single one of you. Not because you're perfect, but because you're ours. The celebration lasted until midnight. At some point, all 7 Mercer children ended up in a pile on the couch, Carter, Sophie, Ethan, Maria, Carlos, Luis, and Rosa, talking and laughing and existing in the casual intimacy of siblings who chose each other. Remember when we were rejected 23 times, Carter said. Remember when I couldn't talk, Sophie added. Remember when everyone said Ethan would never walk, Maria said, watching Ethan chase Rosa around the room. Remember when we thought we'd never have a family, Carlos whispered. They all went quiet, remembering the fear, the desperation, the absolute certainty that they'd never belong anywhere. I'm glad we were rejected by all those families, Sophie said finally, because it meant we found this one, the right one. The only one that mattered, Carter agreed. 2 years later, Carter graduated high school as valedictorian. His speech was about second chances, about families that look different, about the revolutionary act of choosing to love people everyone else rejected. My name is Carter Mercer, he began. 6 years ago, my name was Carter Patterson. I was a scared 10-year-old who'd been rejected by 23 families. I had a baby brother with medical needs and a sister who couldn't speak. We were what the system calls unadoptable. He looked out at the audience. Jax and Elena sat front row, surrounded by all 6 of his siblings. The Iron Brotherhood filled 5 rows behind them. Then 2 Hells Angels bikers decided we were worth fighting for. People told them they were wrong, too dangerous, too unconventional, too different. But they fought anyway. They built an army of support. They challenged every prejudice, every assumption, every narrow definition of what family should look like, and they won. His voice strengthened. Because of them, I'm standing here today. But more than that, because of them, 6 other children found families. 47 more children found homes through the nonprofit we started. Hundreds of families have been trained and supported to adopt children the system gave up on. That's the ripple effect of 2 people deciding that love matters more than prejudice. He paused, looking directly at his parents. Mom, Dad, you saved 7 children who were drowning in a system that had failed them. But you didn't just save us. You taught us that we could save others. That our trauma could become purpose. That our pain could become power to help people who were suffering like we suffered. Carter's voice broke. I was 10 years old when I said I'd rather die than be separated from my siblings. I meant it. I was that hopeless. Now I'm 18, heading to college with a full scholarship, and I want to live more than anything. I want to become a family lawyer. I want to fight for kids like we were. I want to tear down the barriers that keep children from finding homes. That transformation from wanting to die to wanting to fight, that's what you gave me." The audience was standing now, applauding through tears. Carter looked at his siblings in the front row. Sophie was sobbing. Maria had her arm around her. Ethan was bouncing excitedly. The twins were grinning. Baby Rosa, not so baby anymore at 5, was waving enthusiastically. "To every person who rejected us, every social worker who said we were too complicated, every system that failed us, thank you," Carter said. "Because your failure led us to the only family that mattered. To a family that proved love doesn't require permission or approval. It just requires people brave enough to choose it." He raised his diploma. "This is for every kid who's been told they're too broken. You're not. You're just waiting for the right people to see your worth. And those people exist. They're out there. Don't give up." The celebration afterward was massive. The entire Iron Brotherhood showed up at the house with food and gifts and so much love. It was overwhelming. Carter stood in the backyard watching his family, all 9 of them, plus the extended family of 40-plus bikers, and felt complete. Maria appeared beside him. She was 15 now, confident and strong, already talking about becoming a social worker. "You know what's wild?" "What?" "6 years ago, we were both kids trying to hold our families together, convinced we'd fail. Now we're here. We made it." "We did," Carter agreed. "But more than that, we're going to make sure other kids make it too." The Unexpected Families Project is expanding to 3 more states next year. I heard, and I'm coming back every summer to help. College doesn't change my commitment to this. So. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Sophie teach Rosa how to draw, watching Ethan race the twins around the yard with his leg braces, not slowing him down at all, watching their parents laugh with club members who'd become uncles and aunts in every way that mattered. "Do you ever think about our birth parents?" Maria asked quietly. "Sometimes," Carter admitted, "but not with anger anymore. They were sick. They couldn't be what we needed. These people," he gestured at Jax and Elena, "they're what parents should be. The biology doesn't matter." "Mine died," Maria said. "Drug overdose 2 years ago. Maya told me. I didn't feel anything. Is that wrong?" "No. You mourned them a long time ago. You're allowed to be done grieving people who hurt you." "I grieved the parents I wished I had, not the ones I actually had." "Exactly." Jax called them over for cake. They joined the crowd, and Carter found himself standing between all his siblings, these 6 other kids who'd been rejected and abandoned and labeled unlovable. They'd built something beautiful from their shared pain, a family, a purpose, a legacy. That night, long after everyone left and the house was quiet, Carter wrote in his journal, the same one Dr. Patel had given him 8 years ago, now filled cover to cover with his journey. Final entry, he wrote, "I'm 18 now, heading to college, leaving this house but never leaving this family. 8 years ago, I was 10 years old and convinced I'd rather die than lose my siblings. Today, I can't imagine a future more full of life and purpose and love." To anyone reading this who's where I was scared, rejected, convinced you're unlovable, listen, you're not too broken. You're not too much. You're not unworthy of love. You're just waiting for the right people to see you. And those people exist. They're out there. They might not look like what you expect. They might be Hell's Angels bikers or single parents or LGBTQ couples or older adults or any combination of unexpected. But they're out there waiting to choose you the way you deserve to be chosen. Don't give up. The family you need is fighting their way to you right now. Let them find you. Let them love you. Let yourself heal. And when you do heal, when you find your people and your purpose, pay it forward. Help the next scared kid. Build the next unexpected family. Change the next life. That's what we do. That's who we are. We're the rejected ones who found each other and decided to make sure no one else has to feel that rejection ever again. We're the Mercer family. We're the Iron Brotherhood. We're the Unexpected Families Project. We're proof that love transcends biology, that family defies convention, and that the people society fears most are often the ones who save lives everyone else gave up on. We were told we were unadoptable. We were rejected 23 times. We were hours from being separated and institutionalized forever. Then two Hell's Angels showed up and said, "They're ours." And everything changed. That's the story. That's the legacy. That's the truth that will echo through every child we help, every family we build, every barrier we break down. Love doesn't require permission. It just requires people brave enough to choose it, defend it, and live it every single day. We chose each other. We fought for each other. We stayed. And we always will. Carter closed the journal and looked around his room one last time before college. The walls held photos, 7 kids and 2 parents, and 40 bikers who became family. Evidence of healing, proof of love, legacy of choosing to fight when everyone said to give up. He was 18 years old. He was heading to college. He was going to become a family lawyer. He was going to change the system that had failed him. But first, he was going to walk downstairs and have breakfast with his family one more time. 7 kids and 2 parents eating pancakes and arguing over the remote and existing in the beautiful chaos of a family that shouldn't exist according to every rule and succeeded anyway. Sophie appeared in his doorway. "You coming?" "Dad's making chocolate chip pancakes." "Yeah," Carter said, smiling. "I'm coming." They went downstairs together, and Carter understood that this right here, right now, this moment of ordinary family life, this was everything he'd fought for. This was the dream that had kept him alive through 23 rejections. This was worth every terrifying moment, every tear, every night spent wondering if they'd ever find home. They had found home, in the last place anyone looked, with the last people anyone expected, and that home had become a revolution. The Mercer family proved that the opposite of rejection isn't acceptance. It's chosen, love fought for and defended, and lived with unwavering commitment despite every obstacle society created. They were rejected by everyone until they were chosen by the people who mattered. Most people who looked past the wheelchairs and the trauma and the medical needs and the behavioral challenges to see children who deserved families willing to fight for them. And those people, those Hell's Angels bikers, everyone feared they didn't just fight once. They fought every single day for 8 years and counting, proving that family has no prerequisites except courage and love and the determination to show up even when showing up is hard. Carter Mercer had been rejected 23 times before he found home. Now he was 18, heading to college, carrying the legacy of 7 rejected children who became a family that changed everything. That was the story. That was the truth. That was the proof that sometimes salvation arrives wearing leather and riding motorcycles, and sometimes the people society dismisses become exactly what broken children need to become whole. They were the Mercers. They were rejected. They were chosen. They stayed. And that made all the difference. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.